večer, dragi gledatelji. Poštovanje, dobrodošli još jedan na jedan. Izvanredni i opunomoćeni veleposlanik Države Izrael u Republici Hrvatskoj Garyjem Korenom je sa nama večeras. Dobrodošli.
Hvala vam, dobro večer. Thank you.
Dobra večer vama i idemo odmah na posao jer puno je događaja i pokušajmo ih nekako sumirati, a najbolje će početi tako da vas pitam koliko se od 7. listopada do danas promijenila situacija u Izraelu?
Thank you. Again, thank you for having me again on your program. I'll be, of course, happy to be here whenever you will feel necessary to share the information with the viewers of HRT and your program. Well, one thing haven't changed dramatically. We are very much determined to win the war. We are still having funerals. We are still bringing people after identification to burial. It's still time of mourning, and it will be a time of reckoning. It will be time of pain. But we have 1,400 plus dead. Vast majority of them are civilians, babies, children, elderly, full families were brutally butchered. It's not a coincidence that we describe Hamas not only as a terrorist organization, but as something that the Western civilization and some countries in the Middle East faced before ISIS. It's brutality and barbarism and the nation that only we have seen pictures of terrible atrocities made by ISIS. So Hamas is a jihadi, radical organization that unfortunately brought not only disaster to people of Israel on 7th of October, the most terrible slaughter of civilians since the Holocaust, Jewish civilians since the Holocaust, but also brought disaster to civilians in Gaza, to Palestinians. And again, we are determined to eliminate Hamas. How long it will take? It will take. From air, from sea, and of course on land, there will be war without mercy. The only mercy we take is on civilians in Gaza.
Kad kažete bit će rat, je li Izrael na neki način odložio početak tog rata ili su ovi razlozi koji do sada spominjete još se identificiraju mrtvi, još uvijek je dakle vrijeme oplakivanja. Naravno, bilo bi naivno za očekivati da to pretjerano utječe na ratne operacije, ali je li i to utjecalo da se na neki način Izrael za sada suzdržio od tog jednog totalnog napada na Gazu kopnenim putem, a onda će zaista rat eskalirati?
Yeah, thank you. We have our own reasons to delay the attack. The war started. First of all, the war started opened by Hamas. Let's leave aside now what a fiasco from our point of view, surprise, and something that we will deal with that after the war. Trying to have the inquiries, how come the army failed, the intelligence failed, maybe the political echelon. But now it's a time for taking drastic measures in order to destroy Hamas in Gaza, wherever, by the way, they have political leaders somewhere in the world. There is blood on their hands as the military wing. We are using the time effectively to prepare our army. It took us 72 hours to mobilize 360,000 reservists. So it was a time to train them, to prepare them. In this, meanwhile, our Air Force, with very precision, guided ammunition, targeted many of the terrorists. We already killed some of them, some of the leaders that were involved physically in the attack, and some other. And again, the full, let's say, waged war will come, as I mentioned. Right now, it's a preparatory step. We're also allowing, for humanitarian reasons, for humanitarian aid to come into Gaza. We called already on the civilians for a full week. We're giving warnings to the civilian Palestinian population to leave the northern part of Gaza and to move to the southern part out of harm's way to safe shelters. And we are allowing for, of course, humanitarian assistance inside. And our another major objective of the war, of course, is release of full of the hostages unconditionally and immediately. That's something that we expect of international community to be very decisive on this point, as decisive in its understandable care for the life of Palestinians.
Hamas djeluje na tom području više od 15 godina. Zašto se po vašem mišljenju, ili budući da ste vi veleposlanik Države Izrael, po mišljenju Izraela, vodećih ljudi Izraela, ne samo političkih, nego i vojnih, spominjali ste obavještajnu zajednicu, Hamas upravo sada odlučio na rat ovakvih razmjera?
Okay, again, we will do the inquiries later regarding the tactical surprise, why they decided to do it on Shabbat, why they decided to do it on the second holiday of Sukkot, Simchat Torah. It was an element for surprise. We had less troops in Gaza, on the border with Gaza, but probably the strategic reason for the attack is more and more obvious. And first of all, who is responsible for that directly is Hamas, a terrorist organization, but very much it's Iran. It's Iranian regime, it's not the Iranian people, it's the regime, the Ayatollahs, the country that creates instability for many years in the Middle East, country that runs terrorist terrorist activities globally, with the international so-called Revolutionary Guards Corps. And many people, not only in Israel, believe the main reason was to derail the contacts that we started establishing between Israel, with the assistance of the United States of America, of course, with Saudi Arabia. It was part of our desire to stabilize the region, to create a coalition of moderate forces, to rebuild the trust. And it was important for them, for this axis of evil, headed by Iran, through Hezbollah and Houthis and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas, to actually kill this process of rapprochement and to kill any prospects for peace in the future, actually.
Iran uvijek posvetim u razgovoru sa veleposlanicima Izraela unazad 10 godina podosta vremena i nikad nije dovoljno objašnjavati. Mene danas nazovem prijatelj koji je sveučilišni profesor, pa me zamolio da mu ja pokušam dati širu sliku, bez obzira što, dakle, čovjek akademski građanin zemlje, što se to zapravo u povijesnoj perspektivi događa sa Izraelom, koje su to odnose. Pa evo vrlo jednostavnog pitanja, jer ne možemo pretpostaviti unatoč tome što je to tema desetljećima i u našim medijima, da svi sve razumiju. Zašto je Iran toliko decidirano, uporno i radikalno do stava: nemamo mi ništa protiv vas, samo napustite ovaj teritorij, napustite ovu zemlju, inače ćemo vas uništiti. Dakle, zašto je Iran do anihiliranja Izraela i državljana Izraela, dakle Židova, toliko protiv vas?
Well, of course, this question should be addressed also by our friends in the West, friends of Israel, those who keep contacts with Iran. This question should be asked: how come Iran, a member state of UN, continuously threatening Israel? We think that Iran should be expelled from UN because of such behavior. Again, we have nothing against Iranian people, just respect. They are suffering probably more than anyone else in the Middle East from this terrorist regime. And I think basically Iranians are looking for hegemony, whether it's a Shiite hegemony, and this is place of concern also for our neighbors who are Sunni countries. So this is subversive operation of Iran. Look what's happened in Yemen. It's nothing to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Okay, so the Houthis de facto ruining part of Yemen and create destabilization. There is radicalization among part of Yemenite population. Look what happened to Lebanon. Hezbollah is running the country. And Hezbollah is responsible to disaster of this country, economic, social. People are leaving Lebanon. Beirut used to be what's called Paris of the Middle East.
Ja. Recite mi, kako Izrael pokušava minimizirati opasnost po civile u Gazi? Naime, Hamas skriva svoje kapacitete administrativne, vojne, ine, među civilnim stanovništvom, da skratim, i objektima, ne, tu su i bolnice, džamije i tako dalje. Vrtići, recimo, vidjeli smo zadnje snimke. Kako vi pokušate minimizirati u tim udarima, dakle, stradanje civila?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Israel is called upon, rightfully, and we don't have any issue with that, to respect the international law, respect the international humanitarian law. And that's what we are doing. Basically, we're calling for the population, again, as I mentioned before, sending leaflets in Arabic, calling on the internet, please leave the northern part of Gaza. Go to the southern parts. Hamas is doing to prevent them from leaving. They established blocks, they blocked the convoys of Palestinians who wanted to. They're stealing the humanitarian assistance from United Nations, different organizations. Do you know that the attacks that was perpetrated on 7th of October, they used pickup trucks of UNICEF, humanitarian assistance, in order to come with their guns and RPGs and everything, to kill, to murder, to butcher, to burn. So we are doing whatever is possible to respect the norms. This is the norms of Israeli army. I was an officer in Israeli army. I know perfectly well what is expected of our soldiers, how they should behave. The other side have not only respect to international law, they have respect to human lives. Okay, they don't even, you know, the national charter of Hamas, people are not aware, definitely in Croatia, no one, we expect to read the charter of Hamas. It basically calls, like Iran, for destruction of Israel. Okay, so we are saying we must win the war. Our friends should allow us to win the war. I mean, we understand perfectly well the concerns and we'll do our best not to harm civilians. I don't want to put empty phrases that every coalition NATO army who was involved in fighting against ISIS in Syria, in Iraq, and against Taliban in Afghanistan knows that sometimes there is a collateral damage. It's unavoidable in a war, unfortunately. We'll do our best not to have it at all when it's possible. But Hamas is embedded in Palestinian civilian population. Hamas is shelling Israel, firing on Israel from civilian areas, from among the buildings, near the mosques, near hospitals, near UN headquarters, offices. In Gaza, there is a rocket position of Hamas. They expect us to hit them back and to create the effect they are looking for, the media effect. Israelis are hurting Palestinians. What happened last week with the claims, you know what I'm talking about.
Rekli ste da ste bili i vi vojnik. Recite mi, kako mislite uništiti Hamas? Stalno se govori o stotinama kilometara tih tunela u Gazi i tako dalje. Mi imamo iskustvo ovdje, tragično iskustvo, krvavo iskustvo borbe za Vukovar. vidjeli smo što se događalo recimo sada u Ukrajini, kada se isto tako jedna pozicija dobro utvrđenih Ukrajinaca, dakle, odoljevala je Rusima mjesecima. Za pretpostaviti je da, evo, recimo, kad vidimo ovakvu sliku, ako sad tu pretpostavimo nekakve tunele, 100 kilometara tunela, kako dobiti takovu bitku bez enormnih žrtava sa svih strana i bez potpune katastrofe? Ili ja to naivno gledam u smislu konvencionalnog oružja, ne znam, 50. godina prošlog stoljeća, možda pojma nemam o tome.
Yeah, well, it is going to be hard. We are not, we are prepared for this type of war. It will not be easy. And for those two reasons, the previous one, that we should be very much careful not to hurt civilian population. And the second one, that we understand that they prepared explosive devices, they prepared those tunnels, they are planning to surprise us. So we should be very much careful also protecting the life of our soldiers. It means it will be prolonged war. It will not be like previous rounds of violence, so-called, as previous military operations against Hamas. It may take months, okay? More than weeks. Also because, okay, I can tell you it's unlike 50s, 60s, or even beginning of this century, we have precision weaponry, we have bombs that can penetrate tunnels as well. But so there are ways to deal with modern military technology also with those challenges. It will not be simple. We'll be careful, mostly because of the humanitarian concern, but also caring for life of our soldiers. So it should be very, very careful and long. As much as it will take, the war should end with the total collapse of Hamas. Otherwise, it will be just another round, and Hamas will come out of it victorious, psychologically.
No, Hamas nije jedina prijetnja. Tu je naravno prijetnja Hezbolaha. I kad je o njemu riječ, kad je riječ o toj, dakle, ovoga grupaciji, ona je kudi kamo opremljenija, to je oko 150.000, dakle, projektila, raketa, kako ih i tako dalje. I to je podatak od prije 2-3 godine. Oni su dobro uvježbani, nije im strano ratovanje, organizirani su. Pa mi recite kako se drži sjeverna granica i što se sve čini, a da taj rat ne eskalira i kroz obračun sa Hezbolahom?
Indeed, I'll start actually not with Israel. I'll start with our friends. We are very much thankful to the United States of America, to President Biden, to Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, with the visits of support, and even more with the deploying of the 6 Navy units of the American Navy in the Mediterranean, closer to the borders with Israel and Lebanon. Also, the 5th Navy had a destroyer in the Red Sea that a few days ago intercepted rockets, cruise rockets, cruise missiles and UAVs that was sent from Yemen by Houthis against Israel. So this is the most effective deterrence, okay? It shows a solidarity with Israel, and it shows that America will not allow Iran and Hezbollah to escalate. It doesn't mean that we don't have a war right now on our northern border. We have everyday clashes, limited scale, but with casualties. Few soldiers, even civilians on the Israeli side, many more on the side of Hezbollah. Right now, it's what's called in military jargon, low intensity. But if it will escalate, as you said, they have a tremendous arsenal. So the damage they can inflict is much bigger. And the echo of this damage, the echo of this widened war will reach all the way up to Europe. Yeah. So it's very important that our friends, not only Americans, Europeans, including Croatians, will be repeatedly saying to Iran, Hezbollah, stay out of the conflict. Okay? If there is important contribution, yeah.
To sam upravo htio kazati kad sam kazao da, ali čini li se dovoljno da se izbjegne ta eskalacija jer tada to kreće domino efektom. Već su se sustegnule i zbog ovih dosadašnjih događaja. Saudijska Arabija je izašla iz ovog procesa, dobro, to je prirodno, tako dalje. I u Jordanu su ustanovite reakcije. Da ne opisujem što je bilo u Turskoj, vi ste povukli ne samo diplomatsko osoblje, nego se pozvali državljani Izraela da izađu iz Turske. Hoću kazati, sve to skupa može, mislim, u tren oka planuti. Recite mi, prati li ovu vojnu akciju i diplomatska aktivnost Izraela da se osujeti i da se na neki način jednostavno normalizira koliko je god moguće stanje kako ne bi eskaliralo u jedan gotovo predvorje Trećeg svjetskog rata?
Yeah, it's exactly, well, let's be more on the optimistic side than very pessimistic scenarios. I think, indeed, the leadership of many countries in the West, in Europe, and over Atlantic, of course, very much realize the challenge, the danger that this time this war can impact not only State of Israel, not only neighboring countries, including some of them that we had reasonable relations, not only to derail, as I said before, this hope of establishment, a bloc of moderate countries with Israel that will stabilize for the sake not only of Israel and the future peace, but also for the sake of stability in Europe. I think, as you rightfully mentioned, it's first of all a role for diplomats, for political leadership, and we are very much thankful to many of our friends who are actually doing this. Again, I mentioned the crucial role of United States, but again, it's something that should be done almost on a daily basis, because the tension on our northern border, mostly in Lebanon, but also with Syria, is continuous, and it can be easily miscalculated by Hezbollah, and we'll find ourselves with much bigger challenge. Again, not only security of Israel, but also security, global security, I would say.
Kako mislite uopće osloboditi taoce u Gazi? Kad smo već kod diplomacije, teško je zamislivo da će to ići oko 200 ljudi je, mislim, još uvijek u Gazi, mislim, još uvijek samo 2, koliko vidim, i to američkih državljana pušteno na slobodu. Kako mislite da će teći ta operacija, najjednostavnije kazano?
Well, we established a small body of headed by experienced General Galhios, some civilian advisors, psychologists, negotiators, and it's let's say, it's double-sided operation, because on one hand, you have to communicate to the families in Israel of the hostages, to keep them updated, to give them any hint if the hostages are alive. We don't know. We don't know. We every day reestablish the number that was mentioned this morning. It's already 222. 2 of them were released, so I think it's 2 released, so 222 are still there. There is, of course, an issue that some of them, few dozens of them, have additional citizenships, European, American, and so on, which of course complicates. And people should remember, speaking about brutality of Hamas, which contradicts not only international humanitarian law, but even the law of Islam. And they were criticized on Saudi TV on that as well. They took as hostages 30 children. They took elderly, among them survivors of Holocaust. So it's a vicious act. Of course, they automatically became a card in any give and take, okay? And they by themselves, on top of the Palestinian civilians, they become also shields, human shields For Hamas, speaking about complication of trying to find them if any negotiations will fail. Okay, but this is, as tragically it may sound, it will not prevent us from attacking. It will not prevent us from hitting and destroying Hamas.
Vratit ćemo se još jednim pitanjem Hamasa. Samo prethodno da vas pitam o vašem, dakle, stavu spram reakcija koje su uslijedile nakon svih ovih događaja. To je vrlo zanimljivo koja je dinamika tih reakcija. U trenutku, dakle, napada Hamasa, svijet, to se vidjelo i po Europi, je nepodijeljeno bio jednostavno uz Izrael, jer to što se dogodilo naprosto je krvava tragedija. U dvije riječi. Da ne nabrajam dekapitiranu djecu i sve. Nakon toga, i u tom trenutku Brisel reagira tako da se daju snažne izjave, obustavit ćemo pomoć Palestincima i tako dalje, tako dalje. Par dana nakon toga, na prvu reakciju Izraela, odjednom je Izrael okupator tog teritorija, odjednom je...
No, I understand. But again, let's be more on the optimistic side of support to Israel. We are very much thankful to many important visits that took place and taking place. Tomorrow we're expecting President Macron of France. We had Chancellor of Germany, Chancellor Scholz. We had British Prime Minister. We had, of course, President Biden. We had President of the European Commission. We had President of the European Parliament. We had many foreign ministers. So people come, to support Israel, to show solidarity. They visit Gaza perimeter, they visit Sderot, Ofakim, the kibbutz that were eradicated. And they see the atrocities that took place there. They support our right for self-defense. They support our right to destroy Hamas. They expect us to do it in proportional way, not to put civilian population harm. Fine, we respect this and will do our best, as I said already a few times during this interview. But you are right, unfortunately, in one sense. Troubles of other people are less of concern for many. You know, we frankly as well, the war in Afghanistan wasn't our challenge. We had our concerns, but it's not that every day Israelis were watching what kind of war against terrorism Americans and some NATO countries are fighting there. So many people in Europe, including Croatia, not necessarily on the daily life, they would expect us to turn the page. They feel solidarity with Israel, and they want the war humanly to stop. Not only out of concern for Palestinians. Of course, there is a European left all over with some prejudices against Israel, with less of understanding of the conflict, history of the conflict, lack of interest to understand why, since the beginning, since our homeland war in 48, our neighbors wanted to destroy us, and Hamas still wants to destroy Israel together with us. So they're not caring exactly about our coexistence with the Palestinians. So we understand this, and I think people that are decent people and would like that this will be maybe last time that such terrorists are allowed to carry such attacks, they have to have a patience. They have to give us a chance to finish this war. Otherwise, we will have like Netflix series in a few months again, and next year again, and next year again. Those radicals will not disappear.
Pa ne, ja osobno, ja sam 24 sata prije početka rata baš izašao iz Izraela. I moramo opisati situaciju. Oko 29 stupnjeva na večer, Sukot je, dakle, sami ste pisali, ljudi slave, dakle, blagdani su, svi su pušteni, na moru su i tako dalje. I u roku 24 sata kompletan način života, kompletan život, ne samo životi oni koji su tragično stradali, nego pro to govorim. Jedan tip života, način života biva uništen. Ja sam tada reagirao u ovoj emisiji, tako da ljudi moraju biti svjesni upravo toga. Ne želim sad izlaziti s velikim frazama da se u Izraelu brani zapadna civilizacija i zapadni način života, nego naprosto hoću kazati da sad tu nema natrag. Nakon ovakvog Hamasovog napada nemoguće nastaviti živjeti, jer sutra se može dogoditi da opet počne neko mitraljiranje po nekom partiju. Stoga, ko će sutra napraviti partij u tom području ili 10 km dalje, jer ovo je mjesto tragedije? Vama drugo ništa i ne preostaje nego sad rad do kraja sa Hamasom.
Well, again, I'm trying to be, I'll follow your question, I'll try to be, let's say, on a positive, optimistic side in a sense. One of the strongest points of the Israeli society, Israeli nation, Jewish nation, is that we are very resilient and we can recuperate easy and we can fight back. And we definitely have no intention that Holocaust will be again. But because our enemy is planning another Holocaust. People in Europe don't understand it. Some people don't understand it. Some people do understand. And again, we are thankful to those leaders that came with very strong message of support. As you asked, we in trauma as a society, as a country, but it doesn't make us weak. But our government should ensure that those communities that were destroyed near the border of Gaza, those towns that were badly hurt, like Sderot or Fakim, the kibbutzim that lost 50% of their members, they were slaughtered, burned alive. Those who survived will need a chance to come back, to rebuild what was destroyed. Only way they can do it, physically and psychologically, if only we will ensure as a country, as the leadership of the country, the government and the army, that it will not happen again. So this is quite a challenge, but we are capable to deal with that. Okay, again, we have to destroy Hamas. We are not waging war against Palestinian people. And unfortunately, many in Europe that now demonstrate for Palestinians, I don't mind if they demonstrate for the future of Palestinian state, but they are actually supporting what happened.
Gledao sam jučer, gledali ste ga sigurno više puta, Minhen, film. I u jednom trenutku se kaže, dobro, mi ćemo sad njih ubiti, ali na mjesto svakog od njih dolazi 6 drugih. Šta sad to znači onda, mi ćemo uništiti Hamas?
It will not be simple. There are different ideas. I think we will need to keep it for another interview about how we see the end. Okay? How we see the end of this war. How you translate this objective of our government to our army. What's happening next? Let's say we finish with Hamas. You need someone else to rule Gaza. It will not be Israel. Israel left Gaza in 2005. Someone else will have to come. Whether it will be international forces or it will be Palestinian Authority supported by international forces, we will not be there. We don't have plans to occupy Gaza, to take control of Gaza. We gave it a chance. They blew up this chance. 2005, Arik Sharon, some people think it was a big mistake, but they had opportunity. They had opportunity. You know, good people who want us to live in peace with Palestinians, coexistence, they had the opportunity to create a laboratory of peace, to create some kind of hope, to build the economy. They have natural gas in the Mediterranean. They can be employed in Israel. Everything.
Možete li malo opisati upravo tu situaciju? Zato što je na usnama svakodnevno oni koji optužuju Izrael, pa vrlo ozbiljnih ljudi, čak i u Hrvatskoj. Gaza je najveći koncentracijski logor na svijetu i tako dalje, tako dalje. Sve u tom tonu. Možete li dakle opisati, kad kažete nije ni za očekivati da svi ljudi, recimo u Hrvatskoj, razumiju situaciju, koji je odnos dakle, države Izrael spram Palestinaca, na koji način uopće se, dakle, živi u Izraelu ako ste Arab? Imate li mogućnost zaposlenja, rada i tako dalje? Dakle, kakva je situacija kad nije ovako abnormalna ratna?
Israeli Arabs enjoy legally full equality. We have Israeli Arab judges in Supreme Court. We have Israeli members of parliament. We had Arab ministers, well, previous government. So we have even some Muslim, definitely Christian Arabs who serve in Israeli army. It's possible. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it still needs time. It's a matter of trust. But check the standard of living among Israeli Arab population and standard of living around, in our neighborhood, without naming different countries. People enjoy a decent way of life in Western time economy. We have doctors, Arab doctors, we have Arab lawyers, we have professors. They have the full opportunities. Basically, it can be offered also to Palestinians. There is a place of coexistence. We had the great thinker, ex-president of Israel, ex-prime minister Shimon Peres. He was speaking on that a few decades ago. But people, it's natural maybe to some extent that much bigger expectations come towards Israel because we are similar to Western community, Western societies, Western countries. We respect democracy. But Palestinians are not ignorant children. You should expect from them the same. Respect from human rights, respect for the rights of the women, respect for many things that they don't do this. And we have to live with them. We would like to live with them peacefully. We have no interest to rule them. But after all, we care for our security. We don't expect Europe to care for our security. You have other troubles to deal with. So we have to take care of our security, okay? We cannot make any heavy compromises without endangering our security. We don't want NATO, we don't want to be a member of NATO. We don't want anything. Just let us to create the circumstances that maybe in the future, we always had a hope. We had a hope, our national anthem, Hatikva, it's a hope to come back to our historical homeland and to establish a Jewish state. We have the same rights like any other nation for self-determination. State of Israel was established 75 years ago after a resolution of United Nations. But this resolution wasn't respected by our neighbors who immediately started the war against us. In the Middle East, you have to be strong if you want to survive. This is the only way. You cannot find a kind of instant formulas, let's recognize Palestine, let's establish a Palestinian state. What kind of state? Hamas state? Terrorist state?
Brinu li vas ove reakcije i antisemitski ispadi te nasilje, eskalacija nasilja u Europi? Spominjali smo prije, dakle, evo, Belgiju, Francusku, da ne idem dalje. Masovni su, recimo, protesti u Španjolskoj, ali pustimo sad proteste. Svako ima pravo na iskazivanje svog, naravno, političkog stava. No, čujte, kad se Židovi Evrope osjećaju sigurni u trenutku, čak i prije ovih događaja, razgovora u elitnim hotelima Evrope, onda nešto nije u redu. Moj gost ovdje je bio Rabi Jakobs. I pričam sve češće tu u epizodu. Ovdje kad je, to je on meni sam kazao, kad je sam razgovarao prije emisije, bili smo u Esplanadi. I najnormalnije se opušteno vladao i došlo je do toga da mi je morao ispričati, vidiš Romano, ja ovako ne razgovaram kad sam kod sebe kući. Naime, predlažem uvijek sugovorniku da malo dublje uđemo u hotelu, u neki prostor, pa da, eto tako, budem nešto sigurniji, a ne izloženiji. To je nevjerojatno. Kakva je sigurnost, dakle, židovske populacije danas u Europi, pogotovo nakon novih događaja?
Yeah, well, as a state of Israel, but also some major Jewish organization, we of course monitor the anti-Semitism globally. And very much we see outburst, a dramatic explosion of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic mostly in internet and social media. We very much hope that international media, I mean social media centers like Facebook and X of Mr. Musk and others will be not only monitoring but closing the accounts of people who propagate hate and anti-Semitism on internet. And then, as you mentioned, there are cases of physical violence. We had even Molotov bottles thrown at one of the Berlin synagogues a few days ago. We know about the case, which is not against Jews. It was Swedish football fans, but probably very much by radicalized immigrant from Tunisia. And there were other cases. There was a terrible case in France, in a school with teachers who were slaughtered by some Islamists. And a lot of graffiti, including in Croatia. You know, we have seen what happened in Split last week. For the first time for many years, there was a slogan, Juden raus. Juden raus, it was used by Nazi Germany. It's very disturbing. Very disturbing. I'm trusting police of Croatia to investigate, to apprehend the involved people. It definitely don't add a good name to Croatia, but not only Croatia, it takes place other places as well. But now Croatia is the presidency of IRA, so the attention to Croatia is much bigger, of course. And especially that Croatia adopted the definitions of denial of Holocaust and anti-Semitism.
Pa pokušava se reagirati na svaki ispad, evo, i na stadionima, što se nije prije činilo, sada se ipak reagira. Dakle, postoje neki realni pomaci. Mislim, nije to jedini, ali to su sad ovi aktualni.
Reactions by anti-Semites?
Da. Protiv pjevanja takvih pjesama i tako dalje.
Again, frankly, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a place for maybe academic discussion. Now it's time not for academic discussions. Whether this hate comes from immigrants, from Muslim countries, Arab countries, whether the hate comes from neo-fascists, right-wingers from different, or comes from so-called progressive left, which is also very much contributing to this hate. It's a matter of major concern. As we are saying, there is a physical war in Israel. There is a propaganda war, okay, and fakes made by Hamas and some media like Al Jazeera. There is a cyber war, and there is another war which takes place here in Europe. And of course, we very much appreciate cooperation that we have with police, with security services, intelligence services. Everyone should be vigilant. Okay.
Recite mi, je li taj antisemitizam nešto što mislite da je cijelo vrijeme perenirao, da je kao nekakva ponornica trajao, pa eto, neki put probije na površinu pa onda nestane u Europi i inače, ili mislite da je on novijeg datuma, ovaj sadašnji, ne, i u nekoj novoj formi i nove inspiracije zbog ovih migracija? Bila je ovdje u Zagrebu, između ostaloga, jedna konferencija posvećena holokaustu. Pa kako vi vidite, dakle, spomenuli ste ovdje sasvim divergentne, dakle, od ljevice do desnice, različite grupacije antisemitski nastupaju. Kako to objasnite da je Europa toliko puna toga?
So, you know, it's impossible to cure ignorance. It's impossible to cure prejudices. Everyone agrees, experts agree that it's a major role for education, especially with the young generation, but also with communities of migrants that maybe came from countries where they never saw Jews even, okay? Or Jews were destroyed there a long time ago. And so I think one of the effective ways is to deal also with Holocaust education, because we know tragically where anti-Semitism can lead. what happened 20th century when the Nazi Germany decided to go for final solution for total annihilation of Jewish race. Okay, so I tend to think that decent people, non-Jewish decent people, will respect their Jewish neighbors, will respect Jewish way of life, Jewish communities. I think it's a responsibility of the countries where there are Jewish communities to protect them if necessary, but also to cherish them. Otherwise, really, especially in countries with small Jewish communities, they will disappear. They will leave, they will migrate to better places. They will go to Israel. Despite the conflict and everything, this is probably the safest place for Jews, especially when they very much consent with anti-Semitism.
To se već događa. Iz Francuske se ogroman broj Židove iseljava u dva pravca. Jedan je Izrael, drugi je recimo područje Majamija i tako, u Španjolskoj. To je nešto nevjerovatno, to je tragično, to je ružno. Mislim, mi uopće o tome ne razgovaramo, ali situacija Židova Evrope je i bez i prije ovog rata već postajala tragična. Ja to ponavljam stalno u emisijama kad god su i veleposlanici i rabini i tako dalje ovdje. Ja naprosto mislim ne mogu razumjeti da Evropa 2023. ponavlja, mislim, potiho jedan antisemitizam 40-ih i 30-ih. Možda preteorujem, vi ćete kazati opet da možda trebam biti optimističniji, ali se zaista Židovi Evrope iseljavaju u velikoj mjeri.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's happening. Jews leave places where they feel unwelcomed. Maybe even they were living there for generations, for millennia, I would say, like in some countries, Middle East, since the destruction of the temple, and centuries definitely. People, of course, Jewish people leave Russia, leave Ukraine because of the war. That's probably the two biggest groups that made Aliyah, that came to Israel during the last 2 years. And then, as you mentioned, some European countries. France is one of them. We are thankful to French president, to French government doing their best. But it's a tough challenge. It's a tough challenge. And again, it's about enforcement of law and about education. Otherwise you cannot win this war.
Ajmo završiti ipak nekako optimističnije. Što možemo mi, što mogu prijateljske zemlje učiniti za normalizaciju situacije i što vi očekujete od prijateljskih zemalja Izraela?
To normal situation, you mean around the war or around the...
Pa i u našoj sredini
to
je sad povezano.
Again, it's interlinked. I think it's continuous support for the State of Israel. It's the only true democracy in the Middle East. It's the only part of the Western civilization in the Middle East. We don't have any concerns regarding our neighbors. We would like to leave them with peace. We have full respect to Islam. We have respect to the holy places, to other religions, to Christianity when it comes to Jerusalem. So give us a chance to win this war. Stand with us. Okay, as much as you respect and call us to be careful, not harming Palestinian civilians, be with us, be with our hostages. Okay, call for their release. Call to Iran and Hezbollah to stay out. Right now, this is the best thing which is needed.
Hvala vam lijepo na vašem vremenu, hvala lijepo na gostovanju. Znam da radite do 4 sata dnevno i cijenim to što ste našli vremena biti sa nama. Hvala puno i do nekog drugog susreta.
Thank you very much.
Nadam se da će taj drugi susret biti u potpuno mirnim okolnostima. Hvala lijepo. Hvala lijepo, dragi gledatelji, što ste bili sa nama. Gledajte nas i sljedeći puta. Moj će gost biti profesor Ivo Goldstein. Doviđenja.